Hey there, and welcome to Elke Art. My name is Mrs. Elke, and today I'm thinking about pie, specifically cherry pie. Do you like cherry pie? It's pretty good. This is a fun project that involves painting and collage and makes an amazing pie. Now, maybe cherry's not your favorite. This is one that you could definitely change to make a strawberry pie or a blueberry pie or an apple pie. Any pie that has this lattice top here would work really well. So follow along with me and I will walk you through step by step the painting, the collage, the paper weaving, so that you can get an awesome pie like I have right here. And if you are liking these videos, please hit that like button and subscribe down below for more fun tutorials. Thanks for watching. For this project, we will be using a couple different things. So something that's circular that we can trace. I will have a pencil and a Sharpie, paint, watercolor, glue, scissors, and then some paper. So I'll need 2 pieces of construction paper. It doesn't really matter what color. And then 2 pieces of watercolor paper. This is 90-pound watercolor paper. It's pretty thin. It doesn't have to be overly thick. You could probably use just white construction paper for this too. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is paint one of my papers brown. So I'm using kind of a big brush and it doesn't really matter even what direction I go, but I'm just going to go side to side and try to get lots of brown on my paper. I keep dipping it into my water, dipping it into my paint, and I'm getting the entire paper covered in brown. I want to make sure that I get a good coverage and that I'm trying to get all of the white spots filled in, even up to the edges, because we will be using a lot of this paper as much as we possibly can. And so I just want to make sure that I get everything painted in and that the whole paper gets brown. You'll notice that my paper's curling a little bit, and that's not the end of the world either. So if yours starts curling up, just kind of hold it down with a finger, even if your finger gets a little wet, and that can help. Now I'm using watercolor. You could use tempera paint if you don't have watercolor, or you can even use markers like Crayola markers and add some brown and then just add water to give it that painterly look. I'm trying to get in all of the areas. I'm adding even a little bit of extra brown. Notice I'm just kind of adding stripes so that my paper is kind of interesting and it's not just all smooth. It will kind of make it nice to have some lines and things like that on my final picture. And I'm just trying to make sure all of those little white areas are filled in with at least a little bit of color. Once I'm done with my whole entire paper, I'm going to put it aside and let it dry. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab my other paper, my other watercolor paper, and now I want to add some color here. Now on this paper, I want to start off way over on one side and I want to think about what kind of fruit my pie is going to be. So I'm going with cherry, so I'm going to go with red. But maybe you want blueberry, so you could go with blue. Maybe you want another kind that's maybe purple, or maybe it's more of an apple pie that would be kind of a yellowish color. So think about the kind of pie you want, and I'm kind of making a big circle that color. My circle needs to be big enough so that if I hold my circle tracer over it, it'll go outside of that circle line. So I'm just kind of painting in my area. Here's my circle tracer, so it's bigger than that, which is good. And I have kind of a nice area done. Now I'm also going to do another area here. This top corner is going to be the same color as my pie filling. So if I'm a cherry pie, then my top corner is going to be red so that it is also cherry. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And about halfway down my paper here, I'm going to make that red. Then The bottom part of my paper, I'm going to make green. And this is pretty much regardless of what kind of fruit you have. This is going to be for some leaves. Now, mine is a very yellowy green, and you can kind of decide whatever you want. Maybe you want it to be a darker green, then you can make it a darker green. Doesn't really matter. Now I'm going back in with some more red and I'm just making some little circles. This is to kind of look like the cherry shapes. And even though my big circle is still a little bit wet, you can see like you can still make out these smaller circles. And it's not super important to make them like perfect or anything. You can see I'm just kind of wiggling my brush in a circular motion and you get the idea, just so that it's a little bit more interesting to look at. So I'm just kind of twirling my brush around, making some circles that kind of overlap or touch each other. And this will make it a more believable pie filling, at least I think here. And this is just another coat of red paint. And I actually want to do the same thing in my red corner blob here. So I'm going to go ahead and paint some red circles up there as well, just to kind of give that a little bit more interest too. So it's not just so smooth. I'm getting nice and circular motions. Now, if you were doing apples, you could probably do like half of a circle, right? Because usually you cut the apples in slices. So otherwise, blueberries would be circles too. Okay, next. I am taking my circle tracer and I'm going right next to the corner in my brown paper, and then I'm going to move it just a little bit away, maybe about a finger from the corner on the side and the top. And I want to make a circle. Now I'm using a Sharpie so you can see it, but you could just do this with pencil. I want to make a circle that's kind of outside of my circle. So it helps maybe to make some marks that are about a finger width away from the edge of your circle tracer, whatever it is. Okay, so I'm just kind of making some dash marks that are about a finger distance away from my circle. My finger can kind of fit all the way around. And now I'm going to connect the dots just like the dot to dot, so that I have a circle that is bigger than my circle tracer. So I'm going around very carefully with my pencil or Sharpie. I'm using a Sharpie so you can see it better. And now I have my circle traced. Then I'm going to use some scissors and I'm going to cut my circle out with my scissors. And I'm going to be very careful. I actually recommend that you cut a little bit inside of your line so that you can't even see your line at all. My line is disappearing because I'm cutting just barely inside of my line. And that way I won't have a big black line on my finished picture. But if you love big black lines, then you can leave it in. Up to you. You are the artist. All right, I'm going to put that aside, and then I've got this paper left, and this is going to be the lattice part of my pie. So I need to make some strips. And here you could use a pencil or a marker to make some lines that go across the paper. So I'm going all the way from one side to the other. Each line is about a finger distance apart, so you can use your finger to measure. I love using my fingers to measure. They're a great tool, and you know what? You always have them with you, so it's kind of handy. Get it? Handy. Anyway, I am using my finger to measure and am getting all the way to the end here. And I'm even going to turn my paper and make some more. So I ran out of space because I ran into my circle. So I'm going to turn my paper and make a couple more this way too. I would like to have around 8, and I might even have a couple extra, and that's okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut along these lines until I get little strips of brown paper. And notice I made my lines on the back so that you won't even see the lines. So if I don't cut perfectly on them, that is okay. I'm going to go ahead and cut all of these out and put them aside so I'm ready to do the next step. Now it's time to do the pie filling. So I'm going to get my circle tracer back out here and I'm going to trace around it to make the circle that will be the inside of my pie. Now this time I can trace exactly around my circle because that is the size I am looking for. And I can go ahead and cut this out with my scissors. So I'm going to get my scissors ready and I'm going to cut around my circle. Again, if you want to, you might want to cut inside of your line so that you can't see it. And that way it just looks like we're really good at cutting circles and no one will ever know that we used a Cool Whip container top or whatever you used to make your circle. All right, I'm cutting this out all the way around and I can put this aside as well because I will be using it again shortly. Then I want to cut some small circles out of my red section here to make some cherries. Now you could go one by one by one by one here like so. And I could cut out all these little cherries, or if I want to kind of speed up the process a little bit, you could always cut out the whole rectangle and fold it a couple times so that you can actually cut more than one cherry out at a time. Brilliant! So if you would rather do that and you've got really strong scissor fingers, you can go ahead and use the folded paper like this and cut out a bunch of cherries at once. So I'm cheating a little bit and I'm going to cut out a bunch of cherries so that I can get all of these cut, and I will save these for later on my project. So I'll put a bunch of those to the side and we'll be all set for that. I'm even going to open this back up and see if there's any room to cut even some more. Ooh, I've got some extra spots here, so I can even cut some more cherries. I want a bunch of extras. Now remember, if you are an apple person, then you would be cutting semicircles or half of a circle, like apple slices. Maybe peaches, that would be another one that you would do like half of a circle instead for peach slices. So it's kind of up to you. But I'm finding every little area that I think, oh man, a circle could fit in there. And I'm going to go ahead and cut out a circle. And I am not tracing any circles. However, you could if you needed to. I am just eyeballing it and cutting out some circles from all of my painted scraps here. So I make the most of this paper and we'll have all kinds of fun cherries floating around my paper. All right. Now, this green area is going to be for some leaves. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out some leaf type shapes and we'll add those to my pile of cherries. And again, I'm trying to make it so that I'm using up all of my paper if possible. So I'm going to continue to cut these out to try to get as many leaf shapes as I can. And again, if you want to try to fold it like we did for the cherries, you could probably cut a bunch out at once. So I'm going to continue to cut out some leaves until I get a bunch of leaves as well, and I will put them aside until we are ready to use them to decorate our pie paper. All right, done cutting out cherries and leaves. Now it's time to start putting some things together. Before I put it all together though, I need a pan. So I'm going to make a pan out of whatever color my heart desires. I'm going with brown. You could go with blue, you could go with green, purple, pink, whatever color your heart desires. And to make the pan, we're actually going to do something similar to how we made the pie crust here. I'm going to try to go a little bit outside of the lines here. Notice I'm about a finger from the bottom of my paper. And then I'm also going to add some handles on the side. So I can add maybe 2 dots that are a finger away from my paper. And then I'm going to make those into kind of a little shape like that. It looks kind of like a bracket shape. I'm going to do that on the other side as well. So 2 dots that are a finger away from my pie crust. And then I'm going to bring one down to the other and then back in. It looks kind of like ears right now. So make some ears. Then I'm going to make a circle that's a little bit outside of my pie color or my pie crust. So you can kind of be about a finger away the entire time. And again, if it helps, you can just make little dashes that can kind of help guide your way. So maybe I'll make some dashes. This is about a finger away, this is about a finger away, this one, and this one. And then sometimes that makes it easier so that you can just trace kind of like a dot to dot and connect those dots with your line. And that can kind of keep your line the same distance all the way around the circle. Okay, that is my pie pan. Now, of course, just like the other things, we need to cut out the pie pan. So I'm going to get my scissors and cut around my pie pan line here until I get it all set. And just like we did before, if you want to, you can cut just inside of that black line or pencil line if you use pencil, or you can just turn it over to the back side of the paper so that you can't see your lines. And I'm going to continue cutting mine out, and then we'll get ready for the next step. Okay, now it's time to assemble my pie. So the first thing I'm going to do is glue the filling onto my pie crust. So my crust is that bigger brown circle. My filling is whatever kind of fruit you picked to put on the inside. It should be a little bit smaller than the pie crust, just like this, so that there's a nice border around it. Next, I gotta get fancy here, and I wanna make this lattice top. So I'm gonna kind of lay out 4 pieces. At least for me, it works well to make 4. I want a little bit of space in between each one. So it might help you just to kind of lay it out kind of like I'm doing so that you can see about how many you can fit. For me, 4 is the magic number. And I'm gonna take a little bit of glue and put it just on a little bit of the side of my first strip, and I'm gonna glue that, just that side on, but I'm gonna leave the rest of it unglued for now. So a little bit on the side, I'm putting it right on my left side, making sure that it goes all the way across so that there's a little bit left over on the right as well. And I'm gonna glue each strip so that there's some pie showing through. I want to be able to see that red showing through, okay? And you can see my sides all go far enough to the other side, and none of them are stuck down on the right, just on the left. Okay, there's my first 4 strips stuck to the left side of my pie. Now I want to do some weaving. So when I weave, I go over, under, over, under. So I'm going over the first, or under the first one, over the second one, under the third, and over the fourth. So do opposite each one. It doesn't really matter which way you start, okay? And I'm going to push it over, not quite to the edge, because I still want to see some pie in between. My second one needs to be opposite my first one. So my first one, I went under. My second one's going to go over and then under, over and then under. So it's just the opposite of what I did for my first one. And notice I didn't go all the way across. My next one's going to be opposite, so I have to start under and then over, under and then over. And then my last one, I think I can fit one more, is going to be over and then under, over and under. So notice each one is opposite of the one before it. Make sure you do that right so you can see under, over, under, over, over, under, over, under, under, over, and so on. So you want to make sure that they're always opposite. And then once I have it all laid out, I'm just going to kind of lift my strips and glue them down so that they don't wiggle. So I want them to stay put by just gluing down the ends here right on the edge of my pie. The middle doesn't matter, it'll stay down as long as the ends are glued. So I'm going to continue to do that all the way around. Now that I have them all glued down, I got to give them a trim. So I'm just cutting around my circle and cutting all these extra scraps off. So now it looks like it's part of the crust. I didn't need all that extra hanging off the edge, so I can just keep twisting and trimming until it's all nice and round, like so. Very good. All right. I can put all those scraps aside, and now my pie looks good enough to eat. I'm going to put it in my pie pan by gluing it just in the center like so, and then it will be ready to put on my paper. So I'm going to go ahead and glue the back of my pie now, my pie pan, and I'm going to add that to my paper, which is kind of like a table mat. It's just a rectangle piece of construction paper. Mine's cardstock, it's like a 9 by 12. I'm going to glue that right in the middle, and there you have a beautiful cherry pie. Now I could stop here, it's very nice, but I thought it would be fun to decorate. So I'm adding some cherries to my cherry pie. I want to put a couple on the top of the pie just kind of for decoration. So if anybody's curious, they're like, ooh, I wonder what kind of pie that is, they will know that it's cherry pie because I've got some cherries on top. And I'm going to put a couple leaves on top too, just as kind of a little bit of extra color. That green kind of ties in with the green of my table mat and it just makes it look nice. So I'm adding a couple leaves here to the center of my pie. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing around my pie. I mean, who wouldn't want a bunch of cherries decorating your placemat? So I'm going to take all of my other cherries and just glue them down around my paper. And you could do this with apples or peaches or blueberries or whatever pie you have made. And it just kind of adds some excitement, a little bit of color around. Notice I have some cherries I can put side by side, like they're touching even because they're so close. It just adds a little bit of life to my background. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with my cherries. And then I will also add some leaves as well so that I can get my entire background kind of decorated. I've got 2 cherries left. I'm going to put those on in just some random spots here so that I've got a good amount around my pie plate. And then now I'm going to do the same thing with my leaves. So I'll go ahead and use a little bit of stick glue, and I'm going to go ahead and put some leaves. They can be touching the cherries or they could just be floating. It doesn't really matter. It's kind of whatever you want. My leaves are actually a really similar color to my paper, so they don't bring a ton of extra color on my table mat, but it is kind of nice to have a different shape, something that's not round but pointed. So I'm going to use all of my leaves too and continue to add them to my decor here. I hope you have enjoyed working on this project with me. I think this is a super fun one. It is great to use for holidays like Thanksgiving or Christmas, or also just to celebrate the harvest, or whatever season. I know cherries are out in the summer, so that's also a fun time to celebrate whatever fruit is being grown. So have fun with this, get creative, and I hope you enjoy making a pie collage. Thanks so much for watching, and head on over to Elke Art for more fun art tutorials.